Hi everyone, my name is Alvaro. I'm a senior software engineer at Thousand Eyes, part of Cisco. And today, basically, we're going to talk about the future of JavaScript. First things first, thank you so much for choosing my talk. And we have a lot of content to cover in just 50 minutes, so we're going to go straight to it, okay? Basically, what we are going to do today is that we will go together through some of the proposals that will be part of the next ECMAScript release that is scheduled for July, that is ECMAScript 13, and then we will spend around half an hour going through some of the most interesting proposals that are out there, basically the ones that the community has been requesting the most, and what problems they solve, and basically how JavaScript will look like in the upcoming years. First things first, like why should you care about the future, right? And why don't we focus on the present? Well, for a couple of reasons. The first one is that this might be one of the key reasons, one of the key factors we're choosing between, for example, adding a new dependency to your project, like a new library, or going with something that will be supported natively by JavaScript in the near future, right? And the other reason why you might be interested is because some of the proposals that we're going to see here today are already available. I mean, they are not supported by the browsers yet, but as long as there is a bubble plugin or a polyfill or a transpiler, that you can at least start playing with them. Okay, cool. So if we want to talk about the future of JavaScript, then basically we need to rewind a little bit before so we can understand where we are right now. So let's rewind back to 1995. This man here, his name is Brendan Eich. He's the one who created JavaScript when he was working at Netscape. Basically, someone came to him and, hey, we need to create the new standard of web development, a programming language. And then he said, okay, give me 10 days. And then in 10 days, he came with LiveScript. He wanted to call it Mocha at first, but the problem is that it was trademarked. So then internally they called it LiveScript. But then when it was released with Netscape Navigator 2.0, that is basically a browser that Netscape had back in the years, then they decided to call it, boom, JavaScript. And the idea for this was basically that Java was trendy, and then it was like, okay, the marketing team came and said like, hey, if we call it JavaScript, there is a lot of Java developers out there, no? So if we call it Java, it's gonna attract some people. JavaScript, lightweight Java, boom, we are gonna nail it, right? And so they decided to go with it, and they were super proud of what they did. So they decided to level it up. So they decided to create a standard out of it, no? So Netscape, what they did is that they went to ECMA, that is an organization that takes care of creating standards, and then they said, hey, we want JavaScript to grow organically, we want to have a big community, we want to expand, to have more features, to have better syntax, so we need a standard out of this. Can you help us? And then ECMA took JavaScript and then created a committee, a group of people called the TC39, and that they were the ones in charge of creating a standard out of JavaScript. And then they started working on it, and in 1997, in June, they came up with the ECMA 262. That is basically one of the many standards that ECMA has that contains the definition of ECMAScript. And what is ECMAScript? It's nothing else than the document that I mentioned before that covers basically the syntax, the API, the expectations of the language, and then yeah, in June 1997, boom, they created ECMAScript. And then this was a big moment for JavaScript, because at this point, before what we had is that ECMAScript was created based on JavaScript by the TC39, but from now on, JavaScript is no longer its own programming language. It's now an implementation of ECMAScript. What does this mean? That if ECMAScript changes, if you change what is in this document, then JavaScript needs to support it, okay? So basically, you might be wondering, Alvaro, why are you telling me this after 4 minutes of the talk? Well, because when we talk about the future of JavaScript, what we are talking about is about the future of ECMAScript and the different proposals that are out there planning to change what is in this document, okay? Then the question that might come up is, okay, Alvaro, how do we change ECMAScript? Like, who can change ECMAScript? How does this work? Well, there is basically a process composed by like 5 different stages that they go from 0 to 4, because we're engineers, so this is how it works. And then the way it works is that, let's say you have an idea, you want to change something, then you need to find someone in TC39 that is willing to introduce your idea to the committee, right? They have a meeting every 2 months, and then basically this is where they introduce new proposals, etc. And then once that person in the TC39 introduces the idea to the committee, two things can happen. It could either be rejected, it's not worth spending time on this is not a problem, and then it would go to withdrawn. Or the other thing that could happen is that, hey, the TC39 agrees that this is worth spending some time on it, so let's start working on it. Stage 1, that is when we start thinking of the solution for the problem, right? You have a problem, and now we need to find the right solution for the problem, in the sense of like, we can extend a class, we can we can change a class, we can change prototype, we can introduce a new operator, right? There are so many things that you can do. So this is about finding the right one. And once everyone is on the same page and we know what we want to work on, then we go to stage 2. And in stage 2, what we do is getting our hands dirty, and this is when now we start designing the solution. This is where we talk about the syntax, the API, the methods, what the solution will contain, and nothing else, right? So once everything is written down and everyone agrees on that this is what it will be included in ECMAScript, then we are ready for stage 3. Stage 3 is like, okay, there's nothing else to write, everything is already done. Now now what we are waiting for is for developers to implement what we have written down here, and they will come up with feedback, right? They come back and then say like, hey, for example, people from Mozilla, people from Google, they will try to implement these changes in V8, SpiderMonkey, right? And then, hey, this cannot be done at first because the way we implement private properties, blah, right? And then they will iterate over this, and as soon as all the developers give some developers give the green light, the thumbs up, then bam, we are in stage 4. And in stage 4, what it means is that, congrats, the proposal will be part of the next ECMAScript version that is released every year in July, right? So for example, now we're in May, so there is one that is going to come in just a couple of months. And what we are going to do now, so that you can get used to a little bit with how the proposals look like, is that we are going to dive into some proposals, okay? So let's take a quick look. So first things first, for anyone who is interested, the TC39 has a repo in GitHub that is the proposals repo, and this repo, basically what it does is that it shows the stage of each one of the proposals that are under ongoing development. So you can see how we have some here in stage 3, but for now we're going to focus on some of the ones that will be part of the next ECMAScript 13, basically. These are the ones in finished proposals. Let's take a look at some of them. So you can see, you might be familiar with some of these ones. We have been using them for a long time. No, includes, object values, object entries. These are already like the basics of JavaScript, right? These are not new anymore. So if we scroll down, then you will see how everything that has the column, the last column is 2022, then this means that it will be part of ECMAScript 13. So because we only have 50 minutes, of course we can't go through all of them, and there is more interesting stuff that we need to talk about, but let's take a look at least at some of the most curious ones, the ones that are not that easy to understand, and then we can like, if you have any questions about any others, please let me know, and then we can talk about them at the end of the session. Then let's start, for example, with something that has been introduced in JavaScript, and this is private properties for people who develop with Java. This might be like super basic, but hey, for us, we didn't have JavaScript. We didn't have private properties supported by classes, right? What a shame. And then, so as of today, I'm showing you here right now, like the workaround that our poor JavaScript developers have to deal with. That is basically the creation. What you do is that, and just to confirm, can you see properly the screen? All good? Okay, awesome. What we have here right now, it's a map. Okay, it's a weak map that basically is like a map, but the keys are objects and the values will be removed by the garbage collector if the reference to the object disappears. For example, Alvaro, what did you just say? Let's say that I have this person, right? And then one of the keys of this map is this person. If I remove this key, if I remove this person in runtime, then the garbage collector will say, hey, because there is no longer a reference to this object, I'm going to remove the key and the value. I no longer need them, right? So now that we have this map, then when constructing the class person that has a name and ID, and the ID we want it to be private, then rather than define a property like you would do like normally or in Java or any other languages, then what you do is that you set this, you hide this private property in the map, and then you can always get, basically what you're saying is like, okay, this instance of person will have this ID, and then you can always get the ID by ID map.get this, right? Similar to how a map works. Well, and just so you know, like what I'm gonna do is that I have here running an extension that is called Quokka, that basically whenever you see like these comments followed by the question mark, what you see on the right side is basically the result of that line of code. Okay. So for example, here you can see how, in fact, we are not exposing the ID, we're only exposing the name. And when getting the ID, we get the expected ID, that is 27. But yeah, this is a workaround. People, this is like shame for us. We shouldn't do this. So let's take a look at how we can change that. Now, with the additions of private properties, it's as easy as, boom, congrats, you have your first private property in JavaScript. Basically everything that all the private properties are defined with the hash at the beginning, and then by doing this, you can, as easy as doing this hash.id, you can just access to the property. Notice how you no longer need any weak maps. And then there are a few caveats that we are going to cover, but for now, if I save and I refresh, you can see how the get ID is still working, right? You can also define, like for example, you can define private getters. No, you can do something like this would be the private getter of ID. And as I said, there are a few caveats of this implementation as of today, and that is that, for example, right now we have the class person, right? Let's say that you want to create a class that extends of person, like we are in DevOps, so developer, boom, right? As you can see here, I'm trying to access to this private property in a class that extends person. The problem when I save is that you will see how the private field cannot be accessed from classes that extend. It cannot be accessed from other classes that is not the class that defines the property, right? And then basically what this means is that this unfortunately is not valid. You would have to have some sort of getter. But what you can do is that you can access to private properties of the same instance of the same class, right? When running methods inside the class. No, and let me explain what I mean by this. So for example, let's say that we have equals, no? And basically we have a person and we want to check if it's equals to another person. Then first things first, this will be this hash ID. And this person, that is an instance of the class person, then you can access to the private property of that instance, even when it's received as a parameter, you can always access to the hash ID, right? And the reason why you can do this is because you are inside the class person. And the method is running inside the context of the class person. And this is pretty much how it works. I can do a quick example here. If I do another speaker, and then we'll call him Cesar, for why not? And then let's keep the ID the same. Then if I do another speaker equals the speaker, then if I'm not lying a lot, yeah, this is true because they are the same ID. If not, this is false because they are not the same ID. Okay. Cool. In addition, like another thing that they have added is static properties. Like you can now define static, I don't know, type, for example, right? Which is something that we also didn't have before. So something to keep in mind. And yeah, this is coming to ECMAScript. I think it's already supported by pretty much all the browsers out there, but it won't be part of the standard until July. This is one of the things that has been introduced. The other thing might be a little bit more controversial to say it in a way. Basically, I'm pretty sure you are familiar. If you have worked with JavaScript, there is this keyword that is called wait. This is a keyword that you use for when you're running inside a async function like get developers, no? And if this is, for example, an API, a call to an API, right? You can always do const result equals await, and then you do a fetch and then return results. What this means is that the JavaScript will stop here until the promise is fulfilled before continue running the code. It will wait. Otherwise, if you don't have this, then what it will do is that results will be the promise of this of that request, right? So this is something that, as of today, you can only do in async functions, but that's no longer the case. You can also do it, for example, in the top-level module. Top-level module, let's see an example, I think, it maybe to understand what's going on here. So, for example, let me show you a quick project that what it is nothing else than it's an app that basically shows hi devox or hola devox in the language that is configured in the navigator. Let me actually quickly run it, and then I can show you how this works. If I do npm run, this is nothing else than a bit project, and if I do boom, you can see hi devox UK, and this is because I have the programming language. I have the language in English. Then what we are doing basically is that we are importing all the labels, and then we are in runtime checking which labels object we want. So for example, let's take a look at one of them so you know how it looks. It's basically key hello, and then the value is the name, the label translated. And let's go back. Where am I? Boom, here we are. And then what I'm doing is I'm importing all of them. And then I'm deciding which one in runtime by using window.navigator.language. And then based on that, I choose one. And then I use access to the hello key. Pretty straightforward. There is a problem with this one, or right now, the cool thing about this project is that we are only supporting two languages, right? Each one has only one key value, right? So it's quite light in terms of like what we are doing here at the end of the day is that if you see, it's like we are loading in memory all of them, and then we access to the one we want. But let's say that rather than two, then we have like 20 or 30 languages, and then each one of them has like 2,000 keys with 2,000 values, right? Then it starts getting a little bit like in terms of memory, like maybe this is not what you want to do, right? Because at the end of the day, you're using one, right? So maybe not the right option. So now you can use await, the keyword that I mentioned before, to cover this case. And the way it works is that, as I said before, it was only available in async methods, but now you can do something like, okay, I want the labels basically to be the result of this import, and this is gonna be the windows.navigator.language.js. No, it's the convention. Let me so you can see it better. Right now, it will wait until this is the import promise is fulfilled before continue running the code. But now I can get rid of this. What? And then I can just do labels.default and hello, right? And then what will happen here is that, hey, before I was loading two in memory, I was loading the Spanish one and the English one. Now, based on the runtime value of Window Navigator language, I only import one of them. And just for the sake of like, hey, Alvaro, is this really working? Are you just like lying to us? If I go to languages and then I change the language and then I go to Spanish, that is my original language, then I refresh, hola devox, right? As I said, in runtime. Cool. Let me move it back to English. And then this is something that has been, there's a lot of discussion going on. In fact, like it's quite interesting when I was working on the tech talk, because like there's a lot of drama in a lot of these repos in the sense of like, is this the right, because this can create bad patterns in the sense of like, you need to wait until all the promises have been fulfilled before you actually render the website, right? So this can create like really slow performance. So it's something that has some use cases like the one I show you, or for example, when trying to fetch from different CDNs, one of them fails, then you try for another one, then it has different use cases, right? But it's definitely something that you might not wanna abuse of, right? Okay, cool. These are some of the proposals. There are more out there for ECMAScript 13, but let's do something. Let's set this aside, and what we're going to do now is that, as I promised, we're going to spend around 30 minutes looking at some of the most interesting proposals. Basically, these are the ones that what we're going to cover are some of the ones that has been requested the most by the community, and will solve some of the pain points that we have right now as a community when working with JavaScript. So, and there is this website for anyone that is interested that is called Proposals. I think that, I'm not sure if maybe you can see it better this way. that basically is UI friendly way of seeing the state of all the proposals. It's not 100% updated, but close enough. So let's go, for example, to some of the ones in stage 3 that are basically the ones that will come sooner rather than later. So the first one we're going to focus is temporal, right? And this one comes here to solve a problem that I'm pretty sure like a lot of people who work with JavaScript had already, and that is working with this class that no one likes called date. If you ever had to work with date, then that might be a little bit like problematic, right? Because it has like a lot of problems. It's mutable. It doesn't support time zones. It only supports UTC and the time zone where you're running where you are running the code, right? Yeah, the parser is not reliable. You can even set the month and then you set the same month again, and it will give you a different month. Like it's crazy, right? So we don't do date, right, here. So then that's why libraries like Moment, Luxon came trying to help a little bit with like this problem. And now the committee TC39 decided that hey, maybe it's time to have a solution that is supported natively in JavaScript, and this is where temporal comes to help. So I'm gonna show you really quick like how temporal looks like. So for that, I'm gonna go. I have another project here that is the temporal one. Here we go. Boom. And this is what I said before, that basically we have polyfills that can help us like basically start playing with proposal. This is right now not supported by any of the browsers, and the main reason is just that there is blocked right now. That everything is ready in terms of the proposal itself. It's ready to move to stage 4, but they are working right now, and an external organization is working on standardizing the time zones themselves, right? So that's why it's blocked right now, but as soon as that's addressed, then we will be ready to start using it. How does it look like? So let me show you, for example, the different types that temporal will provide you. So these are some of them. We can group them in 3 groups. The first one, let me run Quokka really quick so you can see at least how it looks like. There are 3 different groups. So we have instant, that basically is an instant in time in UTC, right? We have a plain followed by plain date, plain time, plain date time. That basically the idea with them is when you are not worried about the time zone, or when you're only worried about date or only the time, then these are the classes to use. And then you have sound date time, that this one is the most complete one, and it has everything. It has the calendar, it has a time zone, it has a date, it has a time, it has everything, right? And in fact, like if I do, for example, current date here, you will see how it's pretty straightforward to basically to go to any of the others objects supported by temporal, provided by temporal, sorry, because it basically contains all the information, right? And you might be wondering, okay, Alvaro, let's see this in action. Like let's this sounds cool, but like, can you at least show me how this would work in a practical example? So let's do that. Let's say that for example we are gonna calculate. Let's say that we take a flight now from here from Devox. We have the plane just outside, right? And then we take it and then we fly to Tokyo, right? The idea here now is basically to get at what time we would arrive in Tokyo if we do that, right? Spoiler, with date you cannot do that, no? Because we don't support time zones. So there's no way we do it with doing it with just like JavaScript native. There's not like an easy solution, right? So let's do it with temporal. So first we need a departure, no? And we said that this is gonna be just now. So we can just do departure, this, no? And then the other thing that we need to understand what time we would get there is the duration. So, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I think that to get to Tokyo, it might take like 13 hours or something like that. And if not, like, feel free to correct me now. Now is your moment. And then 30 hours, 30 minutes, so we can play with more data. Okay, cool. Then now that we have the departure and now that we have the duration, I think we have all the data, no? That's everything that we need. Then the arrival time will be the departure, and then we add the duration, and then the time zone will be, well, Asia, Tokyo. That is where we are traveling to, no? This is more than enough. Now you can see how, if we see the values, if we leave right now at 5:25 on the 11th of May, then we would arrive there on the 12th of May, pretty much at 3, right? With the Asia Tokyo time zone. And as you can see already, like, it's super straightforward to work with things like adding time or subtracting time, right? Things that with data are not quite straightforward, but here is super. In terms of, for example, the creating new instances, like let's say you want to create a plain date, no? You can always do from, and it's as easy as like, okay, day, and then day is going to be the 29th of the month 7. And by the way, compared with date, in date, the month, they go from 0 to 11. No, we don't do that in temporal. In temporal, they go from 1 to 12 because it's like what we are used to, right, in real life. So this is the way, right? Then this is how you create, for example. As you can see, it's quite readable. It's quite easy to understand. There is no magic behind it. And then, boom, you have your plain date already available to start playing with it. It has a really good documentation. It has a really good cookbook. It's super interesting. Like, the documentation is super straightforward and really easy to read in case anyone is interested. Like, at the end of the session, you will have a QR code with all the resources that I will be mentioning along the talk. But hey, at least you know that temporal is coming as soon as that's addressed, and then we can start playing with it. Okay, cool. This is one of the proposals that are quite interesting. The other one that I wanted to mention in stage 3, if we go back, well, there are some of them like Shadow Realm regarding like, this is basically like loading, running JavaScript code in an isolated environment so that you don't affect the global window or the global disk, right? So it's quite interesting, for example, for iframes, but we are not going to cover that one because it's quite complex to cover. I would need like 20 minutes for that one. So let's focus, for example, in import assertions. That is quite interesting. So as you might know now, browsers support native modules, native JavaScript modules. Before, one of the main reasons why bundlers are here, no, like Webpack, is with the idea of basically taking all the different imports and then bundle all of them in a JavaScript object, on a JavaScript module, and then this is what is later sent to the browser. But you can already, you don't need to bundle them anymore in most of the modern browsers. So that's what, for example, some bundlers like Bit are using to speed up basically the process when compiling. But there is a problem with that, and I'm gonna show you, and some of you might be able to help me debugging a problem that I currently have. And that is, let's say I have a project that is basically an index HTML with a module, ECMAScript, JavaScript module, main, and then main, this is the only thing that it's doing is importing a print hi, and I'm just calling it. And this print hi is nothing else than a function that console.log hi devox UK. Cool. Then if I go to, if I run this, let me check. If I go to the terminal, and then we don't need this one anymore. Now we are working with this one. I'm gonna run npx server, that is basically to serve static files. In this case, what it's doing is serving the index.html. If I go here now, and then you will see how the console.log is not being displayed. So at this point, are there any guesses of why this could be happening? And I can show you like all the code for whoever is interested. If no one, I can. Boom. This is the code. This is pretty much the code. Any guesses of why the console log is not getting rendered? That means that if you cannot catch it, that means probably that you use bundlers, as we all do. And If we go to the network tab, then you will see how, if I refresh the page, you will see how main.js is being loaded, and this is the data, this is the right module, right? But print high is returning actually a 301, right? When we use bundlers, the good thing that they have is that they have access to the file system, right? So if you write something like, if you have something in your code like import print high from print high, then basically the bundler webpack will do, okay, is there any TypeScript file print high.ts, no? Okay, is there any JSX, no? Is there JS? Ah, okay, found it. Okay, then this means that this is print high.js, right? So now if I rerun the code again, you will see how, in fact, now the console log works as expected. But this is something that you might, when you are used to work with bundlers, this is something that you don't know that is happening in the browsers. But there's a problem with this. Notice how when I didn't have the extension, the type, what it's trying to retrieve, and I'm not sure if you can see it, what it's trying to load in memory is, come on, you can do it, is a script, right? Even when the extension is not there. Like, let's make things worse. If I do this, print high.css, and I refresh the page, it's trying to load a script. It's not style, right? And the reason why this is happening is because by default, the browser assumes that you are trying to load an script, and it doesn't rely on the extension of the file to assume the type of the content, right? Or the type of the module that you're retrieving. And this is a problem. Because, for example, let's say that you are actually importing a CSS, no? And then you have that this is style, no? Import style from blah, right? And then at some point, this is something that you don't own, and then whoever owns it decides to, hey, this no longer will be, and in fact, for example, if I change this print high to CSS, you will see how it's loaded now as a script, and it is what it is, and it has been loaded as a script. So yeah, someone could potentially change the extension of one of the, change the value of the CSS file and then inject JavaScript in your code. And we don't want to do that, right? So this is a step in that, so import assertions, that is the proposal that I wanted to talk about, basically comes here to solve that problem where you own where you assert before importing, you assert the type of the module that you are retrieving, right? So, for example, if you have full.json, then you assert that the type is JSON before you even start loading it, right? And then by adding that line of code, what you're doing is that the browser will check that in fact it's a JSON, right? This avoids this kind of surprises of like injecting JavaScript. And basically, the good thing about it is that this is a step in the direction of getting rid of bundlers, no? Because if we can import modules natively and we can import them in a safe way, then hey, we are at least one step closer to get rid of Webpack, no? Like there are so many, no? So many steps that we have to, so many things we have to do first, but hey, one step in that direction, which is always helpful, at least for the developer experience. Okay, this is the other one that I wanted to cover in stage 3. We will talk about one of the other ones that have made it to stage 3 later, that is Decorators, that for you who work with Java, for example, or is similar to it. Well, we will talk about it in a second, but for now, because this happened like 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, when it got moved from stage 2 to stage 3, we are going to focus in the most liked proposal by the community as of today, that is the pipeline operator. And the pipeline operator comes here to solve a problem right now. This is the operator itself. It comes here to solve a problem where basically we have the. Let me show you the problem that it fixes here, for example. So we have this beautiful code, no? And Alvaro, your code is really bad. Okay, I agree. But basically what we have is a number 5, and then we are adding 8, adding 8, adding 5, adding 8, adding 5. This is not really readable, right? Like it's quite easy to get lost. So a good way of, for example, like showing this, of like coding this in a clean way would be like following like functional programming, no? Like super clean, no? When you have an array and then you do a map and then you filter, right? And then you reduce it and then you return this. This is super easy to follow, right? But this is something that unfortunately you can't do if we have a const number 5, no? You can't do something like number 5 dot at 5, no? Even this will blow up, okay? Like there should be a JavaScript error here. This wouldn't work. In fact, if I do quokka, right, it will break. So the pipe operator comes here basically because we, on one hand, we have nesting, no, function calls, and then on the other one we have like chaining, no, like for example, functional programming. This the pipe operator comes here basically to be an intermediate step for these types that don't support functional programming or are not that like primitive types, like for example numbers. So the way it works is that you can use the pipe operator, and let me write it really quick so you can see how it looks like. What we are doing here is that after the previous step of pipe operator, that is basically the result of this is just the value 5, the number 5, then we are calling the method, the function add 5, and then this token, this hash, represents the value, contains the value of the previous step of the pipe operation, right? So right now, if I show you the result of this, basically is 5 plus 5 is doing 10, no? And then the good thing about it is that now it's quite clean, no, to see what's going on. Like if I do this, no, then it's compared with the other one, with the one above, no. I mean, I know it's not the same, exactly the same, but you can see how this is at least more straightforward than the option above, right? And you might be wondering, Alvaro, but like this is you that you are using the two methods, and you are just basically trying to confuse us, no? Like, and it's like, not really. Like, if we go, for example, let me show you an example of code extracted from React. This is from the React library, no? This is currently, no, when running Jest, it has like this code here, and then I wish like you could, like, I'm not sure you, but like at least for me, it's not as straightforward as I would like to understand what's going on here right now, right? But let's see how it looks at least with the pipe operator. If I scroll a little bit down, at least compared with the previous option, no, you can see how, okay, now I pretty much get what's going on. We have some variables, we are getting the keys, we are mapping them this way, and then we are creating a string with all the var blah, and then we add this $sign at the beginning, we do some choke dim, we don't need to understand what this is, and then we do a console log, right? If you compare this with this, like I guess that there is an obvious winner, at least in this example. And like this, if you go to the proposal, there are like so many that are like real. This is like code that you can go to GitHub right now to some of your favorite repos, and you will see like unreadable code that with pipe operators, potentially, it will get better. By the way, you might be wondering, wait a second, but here is a hash and here is a percentage. What's going on? And the main reason is that the token right now is not well defined 100%. In fact, when I did the talk at the 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, it was a percent, and now they changed it recently to the hash, right? So right now it's work in progress. In fact, if you go to the plugin, it actually allows you to change it because they are still like trying to agree on which one should be the way to move forward. Okay, cool. Pipe operator covered. Then let's go to the next one. And yeah, as I said at the end of the session, if you have like any questions, then feel free to come, and then we can talk about them. Decorators, we will talk about it in a little bit, but first we are going to focus on records and tuples. For this one, I think the best thing that we can do, well, first let me tell you what the problem is. I don't know how many of you have worked, for example, with let me see, with immutable. There's a library called immutable that basically, because JavaScript doesn't support natively immutable objects or immutable lists. Sorry, we do the object freeze, but it doesn't work with nested objects inside. We do deep freeze, right? But it's a workaround. Okay, cool. Then records and tuples basically come here to are equivalents to basically immutable objects and immutable arrays. let's see it in the playground, because I think this will be the easiest way to see what's going on and the syntax. So as of today, no, like if you have a person and then name Alvaro and then hobbies, I don't know, A and B. Let's not focus too much on, right? And then if I freeze this object, right, and and then I cannot reassign the value of hobbies, but I can edit the reference to this list. Well, I can edit the array here, this array, right? I can push, for example, and that will work 10 out of 10, even when I'm doing object.freeze. So this is where records and tuples come here. So basically, record is nothing else than an object that it has the same syntax, but with the hash at the beginning. And then what this means is that this is now immutable. I can do something like record prop equals 7, because this will blow up, right? That this will return an error. And then the same applies to tuples. That is basically same as an array, but now, where did you go? It's basically the same, right? And then it has its own type, records and tuples. And some of the good things that it has, for example, is that they have the same methods as the original one, no? So an object, you can do object.entries of record, and then let me log it. And then this is like basically everything supported by objects will be supported by records, and all the methods available for an object are available for records too. And the same applies to tuples. You can, except for the ones that are basically mutating, right? Like the value. In that case, of course, they are not available. And the good thing is that it's not only immutability. In fact, for example, you can create immutables. Let's say that you have any mutable object, no, like this. You can create an instance of that mutable object by just using the spread operator, and this works perfect. Then it comes with some other benefits. So for example, in terms of equality, as of today, in JavaScript, equality of arrays and equalities of objects are based on the reference. So if I do something like, if you do something like this will return false, right? Because it's basically it's not the same instance of the object. With immutability, with records and tuples, it will be different. It's different now. And finally, they are based on the content itself. So for example, you can see here how I have defined two different records, but with the same properties and the same values. And then you can see how this equality simple here, it returns, just in case you cannot see it, it returns true. And the same applies to tuples. A tuples with just one element, 1, it is equal to a tuple with one element, 1, even when it's not the same instance, which is something that is, you don't have to do deep equals anymore, for example, when checking the quality of objects. And then this also, and this is quite interesting, this is also supported for nested equality. If you have an object in a record inside a record, it will be the same as another record with the same record inside, even when they are not the same instance. And it's independent of the order, and then it also comes with some other benefits, like for example, not a number that in JavaScript as of today, not a number is not equal to not a number. That is something that whatever, right? If you have not a numbers inside tuples, they are considered equal, right? So you can see here how we have a tuple with just one element, one not a number, and another one, they are not the same instance, but they are true because they both contain not a numbers. Okay. So yeah, really useful. Fortunately, like this is still in stage 2, so work in progress. They are discussing like still the syntax, the API, and everything. But at least we are one step closer to immutability. And something that I forgot to mention before, but like all these proposals, because they are all in GitHub, you can always follow the issues, you can always follow the discussions, and you can even participate. I mean, you cannot join the meetings, but you can always participate in all the threads that they have in GitHub in case you want to give your opinion. That is always valuable, right? Okay, so let's go back to the slides. we have seen some proposals. Now what I'm going to show you is a survey. So this is called, this is coming from something called the State of JS. A State of JS is basically a survey that is done every year where between like 25,000 or 30,000 developers, they submit like, anyone can submit their responses, but basically this is asking for feedback, which technologies do you use, blah. It's super interesting, and it has a lot of really cool data. What we are going to focus today is one of the questions that they ask is, hey, what do you think is missing in JavaScript? No, and I'm not sure if you might be able to see it, so I will read it for you. But basically, the top one is static typing, similar to TypeScript. Then we have a standard library, that's utilities, like Lodash, for example, right? Then we have better data management, immutable data structures, observables, that is push-based data source, no? Like, well, basically, I don't know, whenever you click, no, this push an event, right? So it's basically modeling this push-based data sources. And then we have pattern matching, pipe operator, and decorators, right? We have covered some of them today, like better data management with temporal, immutable data structures with records and tuples, and pipe operator with the pipe operator that we just saw like 10 minutes ago. But I didn't want to miss the chance to at least give you a high level, a brief overview of where the others are at right now. Then in terms of static typing, at the beginning of the year, I think it was around February, Microsoft came up with a proposal for TC39, where basically they want to introduce types again introduce types in JavaScript natively supported. And it's interesting because, well, as of today, no, what we do is that we compile TypeScript to JavaScript, and then this JavaScript is what is processed by the browser engine, right? What we want to do is that now JavaScript and types, that with just the types, you can send that to the browser, and the browser will be able to parse it and execute it, right? Which is like, in terms of developer experience, is an improvement because we no longer have to save, wait, refresh. No, it's like we can skip one step. And I will briefly mention that if you want like some JavaScript drama, and the types were supposed to come to ECMAScript. In fact, there is a proposal that is ECMAScript 4. So right now we're in 13, okay? This ECMAScript 4 was supposed to have types. And in fact, it's super interesting. If you go to the proposal, you will see how I have, this was not part of the talk, but like, because we have 3 minutes, I can show you really quick. The real story behind ECMAScript 4. And don't forget, we are in 13 right now. Not this one. ECMAScript 4. The missing version. And then here you can see how classes were already introduced, but they were introduced later with ECMAScript 5. But then you can see here how strict typing was already available. And for those of you who don't know, like, we're talking about 1998, 1998, and we're in 2022. But this was already a proposal, right? There is a lot of drama of why this didn't happen. At the end of the day, there were 2 branches of ECMAScript, like ECMAScript 3.1, ECMAScript 4, a conflict of interest. But if you are more interested about it, then in the QR code at the end, you will have like the whole story with the drama of what happened. And then moving to the next one, then static typing right now, well, it's in stage 1 because it was just recently introduced, right? For pattern matching, unfortunately, I don't think you will be able to read this, but it's similar to other programming languages, where basically it's like switch and case, but now it's match when, where match is an object. No, you receive an object, and when it fits the structure of that object, then you apply. You run the function. You run the code inside that when statement. And there is more info at the end in the QR code. And then decorators, it was a big one, but basically it's decorators basically are functions that what they do is that they will extend any elements that you have in your class. And this means fields, and this means getters, setters, the class itself, right? Pretty much anything you can, the methods, anything that you have, you can extend it and change their behavior. Like, for example, here, what we are doing is that we are logging whenever you call a method, we are just logging it and displaying it in the console. But yeah, this made it to stage 3 recently. As of today, as you can see, like some of the ones that I mentioned, static typing, the utility libraries, observables, that is the push-based data sources, pattern matching are right now in stage 1. So there's a lot of ongoing. Right now, they are trying to guess the right solution, right? So work in progress. In stage 2, we have pipeline operator and records and tuples. So we can expect that they will take a little bit, but temporal and decorators are already in stage 3. So hopefully we'll be able to see them really soon in ECMAScript 14 or 15, hopefully. This is the QR code. No worries, like the QR code is also here. But well, I'll leave it here for you in case it's bigger. But this is basically the end of the session. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but if anyone has any, please feel free to come to me, and then I'll be glad to answer any. Thank you so much for your attention. Enjoy DevOps.